Well, we've just reached about 3 minutes past 11, so I think that's timely for us to commence. Good morning and a very warm welcome to you all joining us today. I'm Siobhan Jordan, I'm Founding Director of Interface, and you're all very welcome to our 7th Inclusive Innovation webinar. And the focus and themes that we will speak about today are funding, investment, and design leading to creative arts. As noted, I'm Founding Director of Interface, and I'm very, very delighted to be hosting this webinar in partnership with CEIS. I'm very delighted this morning to welcome our panel, joined today by Lucy Richards, who's founder and chair of Studio LR, a design company based in Edinburgh, and also founder of Better Company, and Gail Boag, who's Dean of the Business School within Edinburgh Napier University. And I very much look forward to chatting to them in a few minutes. But why this inclusive innovation series? Why have we embraced on this over the past few months? And as I said, we've now reached our 7th. So we've had multiple speakers and lots of attendees. So a couple of just brief introductory notes about the series in the webinar series. Its key aim has been to support and facilitate innovation across Scotland's third sector. We really do want to raise awareness about the resources that are available to help organisations address societal or environmental issues and really help in any way that we can to bring to life innovative ideas, not leave them on perhaps an idea in somebody's head or otherwise, but really provide the tools and the opportunities, particularly around funding and resources, to bring these ideas to life. For those of you that aren't aware of Interface, we provide a free and impartial support service for individuals, for entrepreneurs, for social innovators, for businesses of all sizes and organisations and communities. That's right, we can work with anybody, the length and breadth of Scotland. And our role is to hear the needs of businesses and then form productive partnerships with any of the relevant disciplines across Scotland's universities, colleges and research institutions. And that can be for a variety of collaborative projects. We have access to over 28,000 world-leading academic experts. And they're really very, very interested in applied research, how they can help shape, form, co-design ideas, proof of concept, or bring to life suggestions and challenges across companies so that that can really provide, in one sense, independent evidence of what's possible, but also prove early stage concepts, leading to new products, processes, or services, or indeed, where sometimes the art of the possible isn't actually possible. But we also provide quite a lot of advice and support around a range of funding options. We administer the well-utilised innovation voucher programme from Scottish Funding Council and other partners, alongside our knowledge and interest in funding opportunities, particularly aimed at social innovators. Now, in the next slide, as you can see, the Interface service is absolutely unique. There's no stone unturned in terms of the companies and organisations and communities that we have supported over the length and breadth of Scotland. And as you can see and read from the bullet points, our reach is tremendous. We've introduced over nearly 3,500 businesses to academic partners. And that has resulted in 2,650 collaborative projects. And every day that number grows. So the slide is continually being updated in terms of our reach. The team that I head up is based in the length and breadth of Scotland. So no matter where you are located, there's a team member there to help you. And that also helps in our reach, in reaching into the academic disciplines that are relevant, but also in knowing that every mission is possible for our team. We know that the impacts from the collaborative projects are making a real difference locally, regionally, and nationally. And that's through reduced operating costs, through increased productivity, and also leading to new products, processes, and services. So a very brief snapshot of the support and advice that's available through Interface. And so, helping us to be inspired about the art of the possible today is our Fireside Chat panelists. And we very much welcome Lucy Richards, founder and chair of Studio LR and founder of Better Company, and Gail Boag, who as mentioned is Dean of the Business School at Edinburgh Napier University. So Lucy, and Gail. You're a very, very welcome to our fireside chat. And Lucy, I'd like to start off with you this morning and perhaps tell our panel about a little bit about Studio LR and what actually inspired you to establish the business.
Thanks, Siobhan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I really wanted to start a creative business that was about doing things better and making a difference. So what do we mean by that? I guess work that's more meaningful and purposeful, not just for our own team of creatives, but for society as well. And really felt strongly about running a business that people wanted to work for. I had a bit of an uncomfortable relationship with the term graphic design, which is something that we tended to be called graphic designers. It felt quite superficial, a bit throwaway, maybe not something that would have any great impact. So over time, I was keen to kind of change that. And I think now I feel a stronger pull towards sort of creative thinking. And we tend not to use the term graphic design at all. And we talk about the sort of powerful impact that creative thinking can have. And that applies to progress across society. So things have moved on. We've been in business for 17 years now at Studio LR. And we're now setting up a sister company called Better Company, which is dedicated purely to social impact and projects that will really have a benefit to society. And we'll also push the value of co-creation, really believing that that is important. You know, if we don't listen to the people that we're designing for, how can we possibly get that thing right that we're designing? So that's going to be really important for Better Company. And Studio LR will carry on. It's very commercial now. It's a very gutsy creative agency, and that will continue as well.
That's brilliant to hear, Lucy. And I think those principles that you have under Better Company and Studio LR very much resonate with the co-design and the partnership of working that we enable with Scotland's universities and colleges. Mm-hmm. And I suppose what encouraged you to contact Interface in the first place when we worked a couple of years ago on your first knowledge exchange project?
It was a bit of serendipity, and my business partner and husband, Andy, bumped into someone from Interface at a tourism conference. I think it was in Inverness quite a while ago, and was talking about how we'd had this idea to create better signage for people living with dementia. It was really just an idea, but we didn't know what to do with it, and we didn't know if it was commercially viable or anything. And the person from Interface said, "Oh, we can help with that, and we can match you with a university or academics." So I guess we knew we had an exciting idea, but we didn't really know what to do with it. And the connection was just what we needed at the time. It was great. We were matched with Stirling and Edinburgh universities for that first project, and it was wonderful. You know, I think we couldn't have, if he hadn't met that person that day, we couldn't have done what we did, really. So yeah, good timing.
And the signage and symbols project has been really a kind of real interesting journey of co-design. I think we've got some slides that Fiona or Joe can share just to explain that journey and maybe show what's actually happened in real life. So over to you, Lucy. Tell us your story.
Yeah, so the starting point was captured really in this slide. We'd been working in healthcare signage to really just to help people find their way around hospitals and make it a less stressful experience. And while we were doing that, we kept finding these happening upon these signs. And we discovered that they were what people call dementia signage. And they just felt really ugly to us, not very well designed, a bit like kind of transport signs. It was this yellow coming across very strongly, which felt a bit institutional. And we just thought we could reinvent this and do something that was much more attractive and just nicer for the people that were needing to use these signs. It just felt that there was sort of some assumption that people with dementia or older people didn't need things to be designed well. And we just thought that was wrong. So it was at this very point that we worked with Stirling and Edinburgh University really to scope out what had been done before in dementia signage, what had been written about designing it, or any research that had been done. So that was a sort of crucial part of the puzzle to take this forwards. If you go to the next slide. So we were shifting from what was on the left there, these sort of pictograms, which you can't really, it's important to have an image, but the image has to be easily understood. So pictograms that people couldn't maybe understand, terrible plates of food, that sort of imagery that really doesn't make you want to go and eat in that dining room, text and typography that you couldn't read because the contrast was poor, and capital letters. I think we've all learned that writing in capital letters isn't the clearest way to communicate something. So we shifted to what's on the right, and this all came directly from the research. So much clearer three-dimensional imagery where possible, good contrast, good typography, just a much clearer image. So if you move to the next slide, you can see it in situ. So we didn't even really start talking about these as signage. They were more like reminders or prompts. So this is in a care home in Edinburgh, just to remind people, where they are and help them be a bit more independent and confident when they're moving around in their everyday. So there's 2 or 3 images. Yeah, just flick through them. That's one to the garden. And this shows you don't have to use this sort of boxed sign on a yellow background, which does make it feel like an institution. These are just vinyls that go straight onto a wall. They're very, very simple, and they can be on any color of background that fits in with the environment. And that project, so that was dementia signage, that led to us wondering about everyday symbols, which appear, that everybody uses in train stations and, I don't know, leisure centers, airports, everywhere. And we wondered whether people with dementia would find these symbols confusing, because frankly, we find them quite confusing. So we just wondered whether there was maybe some improvement that we could make. So we then approached Life Changes Trust, and they funded a huge project, and we re-engaged with Heather Wilkinson from Edinburgh University on this project, where we did a load more research with the user group, so people living with dementia, just to ask them, did they understand these symbols? Did they know what they meant? Could they be clearer? So just for example, you've got the stick man and the stick woman there, which we know represents toilet. We've learned that, but there's nothing in that symbol to say toilet. And then if you put those people into a box, so third along from the bottom, that becomes a lift, but that's quite confusing if you learned that that's a toilet. So you've then got, a toilet in a box, and, you can see it gets confusing. And the top right symbol is exit. Again, a very confusing symbol for people. So loads of research on these, and we got some really good responses that helped us design these symbols better. So if you jump to the next slide, this is just one example of a dementia-friendly environment at Annick Theatre, where they're now using these symbols. These symbols are free for anybody to use. So, really encourage anybody to do that. And they're not, although they've been designed with people living with dementia, they're not just for that group of people, they're for everybody. And the theory is that everybody would find these easier to understand. So the toilet sign has a picture of a toilet on it. Simple, and you can see our new lift symbol there. And the third one is a new symbol that we created for people with any disability, but it's really all about invisible disabilities and hidden disabilities, which are so common, and people so often get challenged using accessible toilets when they've got a hidden disability. So that symbol was brand new, that doesn't really exist out there until now. And part of that campaign is about raising awareness of hidden disabilities. So I think my last slide, the next one, just shows how that could look on a blue badge parking sign. So lots of people who qualify for a blue badge have a hidden disability. So you can see how that would fit better and be a better communication than what currently sits there, which is the wheelchair symbol. And again, people get challenged all the time for using accessible parking. When they actually have a blue badge, they do qualify.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That's a fascinating and brief introduction to your Symbols project. And in particular, because you drew on expertise from both University of Stirling and University of Edinburgh. Was that quite challenging to manage a couple of different academics, or do they both bring kind of insights for your co-design?
Yeah, they brought completely different insights. We worked with an end-of-life nurse, carer from University of Stirling. So her experience was very different to some of the academics from University of Edinburgh. I mean, it was all valuable. And combined with speaking to the user group, I hate that term, but I can't think of a better term for it. Couldn't have done it without those different groups of people guiding the way and co-creating all the way along. It really was a classic kind of co-creation project. I mean, particularly for that hidden disability symbol, you know, I mean, that's a very hard thing to communicate, something that's effectively invisible. And that one went through lots of stages of design and lots of feedback, and it was just absolutely essential to have that in order for us to get it right.
Absolutely. So that testing of the concepts and continually gaining feedback, hugely important.
Exactly.
And where are they? Obviously, it's fantastic to see that the symbols are being adopted in various different locations, including theatres. But what next for that whole programme of work?
Well, those symbols are available. Anybody can use them. There's a website, inclusivesymbols.com. Anybody can download them for free. We'd like to design more. We keep getting asked if we could, you know, haven't you done a symbol for this or that? And we'd love to. I guess that'd be the next thing to do if we can get some funding to do that. There's lots of really, really confusing symbols out there. I play a little game sometimes when I do a talk on this, and we guess the symbol, but some of them really are quite impossible to understand on their own. I mean, generally you would always have a word with a symbol, but so there's work to do there. Like to continue raising awareness of hidden disabilities with that symbol. And that symbol launched at the House of Commons in London, and it's now coming to the Scottish Parliament. So that's exciting. I mean, long COVID, of course, is a hidden disability that lots of people are experiencing now. You know, so it's very topical, very current. And what else? We spoke to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service about potential symbols that could go into people's homes that might help them. You know, there's a few sort of strands of other things happening really all around just communicating more clearly with people through improved symbols.
Absolutely. No, that's been fascinating and great to hear that, you know, from that gem of an idea in a meeting in Highlands and Islands, what difference it has made, and particularly on the I suppose the hidden disability symbol, and really being able to raise awareness of that. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And I think it's good to draw Gail into the conversation now, because as Lucy shared her story there, Gail, I was struck by the fact that many organisations might feel it's quite daunting and challenging to actually collaborate with a university. So from your perspective in Edinburgh Napier University, how do you think that, you know, small organisations like Lucy's or other social innovative companies can actually be supported by universities?
Okay, thank you, Siobhan, and hello, everybody. I think it's probably worth just sharing a little bit about Edinburgh Napier and who we are in the business school, just to put that in context. So many people will know that we have built our reputation, I think, on programs that are very, you know, connected with industry, graduates that are very highly employable, and we're a modern practice-based business school. So what's really important to us is that everything we do, whether it's teaching, whether it's sharing knowledge or research, makes a difference to people's lives and society, and that means working in partnership with business and industry across all our activities. But I also accept that universities are large, complex organisations, and it can be daunting. I mean, we are the largest business school in Scotland, so we've got 9,000 students and an international reach. And I speak to people all the time, and they say, well, how on earth do we find a way in and get to the right people? So it is very hard, whether you're an individual, an entrepreneur, a business. So we've been thinking about how we can address that at Edinburgh Napier, and I think there are a number of ways that we can look at this. Obviously, by building our networks and working with organisations such as Interface, of course, and building that external reputation through Interface and others, people like Scottish Business Network, Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce, CBI, Scottish Enterprise, so many different organisations that we work with. But we're also developing a new business and innovation hub. And that is in response to people saying to us, how do we know where to go? And it's almost the showcase, the front door, the portal, if you like, into the university. And it's on the website, and people can go in, they can look at the types of projects that we've been involved in, and the areas of expertise that we have, and they get pointed in the direction of somebody that can help and link them up. So obviously in the same way that Interface do as well. But with regards to thinking about social enterprises specifically, and inclusive innovation, we do work very, very closely with social enterprise. Yes, it's a small sector, but we all know it's a growing sector. And we're really committed to supporting those communities and those organisations to make that positive impact operating in the real world and making a difference every day in society. So what we launched in April 2020, just as COVID was hitting us all, so timing at the time didn't seem great, but actually it's worked out really well. It was very, very good timing in the end because of the support we've been able to give. We launched the Impact Investment Symposium. And this is a really important project that we've been really proud to host over the last 18 months. And it really is to break down those barriers that are faced between small social enterprises and to forge those stronger links between Edinburgh Napier and the wider community.
That's great to hear, Gail. And so could you maybe, what was the trigger to get the Impact Investment Symposium off the ground? You know, it might not necessarily be seen as a starting point that a university would actually launch this. It might be seen more, oh, that's for the investment community.
Yeah, and I say the trigger was that we want to make a difference, and we absolutely recognise the importance of social enterprise and impact investment, and it also grew out of that longitudinal research and institutional impact investors in the Scottish ecosystem, which was carried out by one of my academics, so somebody who's extremely passionate on that topic, and with Dr. Wendy Wu, and she really drove this agenda forward because it was recognised as an area obviously with a lot of potential, lots of great work being done, but by bringing together the different sectors, promoting that knowledge, providing that platform for discussion, I thought, well, Edinburgh Napier could make that meaningful contribution. And then, of course, if you think of the timing, which I was saying, initially we thought this isn't great timing, but actually turned out to be perfect timing. Because with COVID at the start of 2020, it provided the need and the opportunity to really drive that project forward. So Symposium now is collaborative, very much collaborative project. We have over 90 members, and they comprise investors, philanthropists, social entrepreneurs, change makers, as well as those practice-oriented academics. And that's to help gain that insight, spread the knowledge, and again, make a real difference in the field of impact investment, social enterprise and ESG. And we meet monthly, guest speakers from all over the world. Actually, we've been phenomenally lucky with the people that have got involved and spent and committed lots of time to this. And since then, it's progressed and we've developed 5 action groups, which then have gone on to pursue particular projects, exploring best practice and recently making recommendations to government as well to change policy. So really exciting times.
That's great. And it sounds like it's open for anybody to join up and participate.
Absolutely. It's all about building connections, joining the dots, highlighting opportunities and signposting access. So very, very keen and eager to encourage people to really get involved and ensure that we meet our objectives of being very inclusive and looking at increasing investments, making that social impact across the whole of Scotland and beyond.
That's great, and we can certainly share the details of how people can join for those participating in the webinar. But it's tremendous that, you know, such a regular monthly meeting is really providing such great peer-to-peer support. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to take a slight pause now and ask our audience if they have any questions. Fiona, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but this is the point to encourage all, or indeed for any member that's contributing online and that may have some thoughts or challenges with respect to raising investment. I know that there's lots and lots of other organisations that are available to support, for example, Social Investment Scotland, etc. So if anybody within our participants would like to share their observations and thoughts, now's your chance to either raise your hand or put something in the chat. Okay, well, might
Siobhan,
be a little
this
bit.
is James. Sorry,
Yeah,
I was trying to come off of video there. Gail, can I ask a question in regards to the symposium? One of the challenges we find in social enterprises is attracting or securing investment for those social enterprises that have got large-scale ambition, and i.e. that might need a significant level of maybe 6-figure investment. And I'm wondering if that's a challenge that you've discussed within the symposium, and if so, I'd be interested to hear more about that. Or if not, then is that potentially something that could be brought forward?
Sorry, I was on mute there. We haven't, thanks for your question, James. We haven't discussed that specific area around sort of six-figure investment at this stage. Although having said that, there are lots of groups and communities and networks where we've linked up the investors and social enterprise, so they may well be having those conversations. But what we absolutely do talk about regularly is the different sort of funding avenues and the barriers that social enterprises of all sizes, not just the big ones, small and large, find. So we've talked about ways or options, really. There's so many different options and funding models, and how we as a business school can help support, signpost, but also facilitate those conversations. And having the investors and the philanthropists on there as well, they are adding their expertise and direction and advice into the pot as well. So I certainly wouldn't let funding ever be a barrier, because if we can get together and discuss and collaborate and talk and bring the right people together to find a way forward, it helps. And the other area, just very briefly, that we do a lot of is help and guide the social enterprises, although largely it focuses on the smaller ones, maybe the budding entrepreneurs as well, around business planning and developing. So what, the robust business plan, obviously for a social enterprise, it has to be as robust as any entity. So it's really understanding and helping them through that, using the expertise with the investors as well to say what they're looking for and how they can make that plan stand up and be attractive.
Thanks, Gail. That's great. And I think you've probably slightly answered Louise's question in the chat, which was around what barriers you had encountered at the university in enabling social enterprises to collaborate. So you've talked about funding, you've talked about having the optimal business model. Are there any others that strike you at this point that have emerged through those discussions?
The things that are being raised, other than, as I say, the obvious, the funding, the organizational structures and business models as well. We've talked a lot about social enterprises having the knowledge, the expertise, and the agility to adapt, particularly with COVID. We saw a huge amount of transformation, and many of their businesses having to change their business models very, very quickly, or what they did. So that's been a big barrier to them, and we've obviously worked with them to talk through that with the other experts and share good practice and what's worked for others, and seen some of them work together as well, and new business models to collaborate and come together. So I would say that's a big one as well. But probably the biggest is often, particularly if you're working in your own business, you don't know what you don't know, and it's just having that different conversation and being involved in a collaborative project where somebody might say something and you can pick up at it, and actually maybe that would apply to me, or maybe I can learn from that or use that. I think that is the biggest benefit with this type of project that we can bring, and maybe there's barriers there that people haven't realized, but actually they can then think, well, yes, that does apply to me, and this is how I can take it forward.
That's a very well used phrase that we use across Interface in terms of both academics and companies don't know what they don't know. And then my flip side of that is I keep saying, ask, always seek knowledge. So there's a tip of the day. I think just Lucy, turning to you, Louisa put in the chat there the kind of word daunting. And, for social innovators, it can be quite daunting to actually approach a university. So looking back on the collaborations that you've established, not just the ones with Stirling and Edinburgh, but also the other collaborations, what barriers or challenges did you encounter?
For me, a lot of it was around momentum. So, we have ideas, we want them to happen right now. We don't quite know how we're going to get there, but we just want to, impatient to get to the solution and importantly, to get to the impact. So, in my experience, the academic world moves much more slowly, and some not through Interface, but other funding applications we've applied for have been sort of torturously slow. The funding's for 2 years away, and that is challenging for somebody who's had an idea and really just wants to do it. but knows they can't do it without that sort of level of rigor and depth of knowledge that the academia can bring. So that's difficult, and I suspect some entrepreneurs potentially lose interest if things don't happen quickly and they can't get to where they need to get to. So yeah, I guess that's a challenge.
So maintaining momentum, and probably that's aided by maybe having clear milestones and co-design at the outset that everybody feels bought in.
Yeah, some structure, around delivery, and a sort of process is really good to have.
And you mentioned about gaining funding from the Life Changes Trust. Was that a particularly rigorous application mechanism, or allowed you to be fleet of foot?
It was fairly quick. It had to go through a board of trustees, and there was a delay on that. I think for whatever reason, it had to go to the next trustee meeting, which was 3 months away, and then the next one was another 3 months away. But actually, in the scheme of things, it was actually quite quick. But it was a completely different process. It's an idea is being kind of evaluated by a board of trustees, which is completely unique, isn't it?
Absolutely, and probably unlike some of perhaps more public sector kind of funding mechanisms that are available or through other organisations.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
If we had a magic wand, we'd have seamless monies for catalysing connections and making things happen in with momentum. Yeah, and a talk for another day, I think, in terms of how we can magic that in Scotland. But I guess when you thinking about those barriers and challenges, and what's the hardest thing you might consider for a social entrepreneur in terms of gaining success from a partnership, even not just with universities, but even partnering with others, your user groups or otherwise, to get to the end result? What's the hardest thing in all of that?
I suppose some sort of clarity. I mean, you will get there in the end, but it takes time to get that sort of thing right, doesn't it? So you're putting all these pieces of a puzzle together through feedback and people's viewpoints and your own experience and all the people that you're working with. So I suppose getting that to a point where it's right and it's tested well is all about getting some clarity, isn't it? I think. And then having the confidence that it's right.
You spoke about the purposefulness of some of these collaborations. So on the flip side, there's probably quite significant rewards.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the rewards of working, with universities and academics are huge. The ideas just aren't viable until you've brought in that kind of element of rigor and research, depth of knowledge. I don't know if it's typical of creative thinkers not to sort of have that, but it certainly comes from another place in my own experience. And I'll say it again, but without interface, we just couldn't have got even onto that sort of first step of the journey that we've been through. So yeah, the rewards are huge, absolutely. Fantastic. Definitely outweigh that sort of, frustration around momentum or speed. And I think,
you mentioned that you're now part of leading on the Better company to make, better engagement, better societal impacts. And do you see a role as you move forward with some of those for academic institutions to be partners in that journey?
Yeah, potentially. I think it's just all about valuing that creative thinking, and I think that's something that's becoming a little bit more front of mind for people. There's a new qualification in creative thinking in secondary schools being piloted across Scotland, and it is so exciting. I think it's just genuinely the most exciting thing that's happening in education right now. So you can take that in S4, 5, 6 as one of your subjects. You can combine it with modern studies or business studies or physics. And you can just imagine the potential there. I mean, that's real progress. I think to really value creative thinking in schools is, and then future careers is really a step forward. And I'm guessing universities are kind of going to see the benefit of that when the kids come out of school. So yeah, I guess that's great.
Absolutely, and a great segue for Gail in terms of your graduates of the future, being instilled with great key principles around design and co-creation. Gail, just in terms of, there's been a lot of talk in this past few weeks, I suppose, with respect to nurturing purposeful businesses. And how do you think Scotland's reputation stacks up, you know, both locally and internationally with respect to this nurturing, and what role you know, you're playing in that?
So I think very strong. For us, particularly, and when you think about what we do at the universities across Scotland and at Edinburgh Napier particularly, I think, you know, purposeful business has been on the agenda for a long time. Edinburgh is particularly well placed. I think looking at this with the B Corps and the cities can be and all sorts of things that we're talking about, but it's actually been driven so well by our young people and our students. And what we've seen in recent years is students have been demanding, rightly so, and driving that direction of travel. So when we were thinking, when I came into the university and the business school 4 years ago, and we were reviewing the vision and the mission, or who we stood for, what we wanted to really build our reputation on, and purposeful business was right up there, because when we consulted with students and we consulted with businesses, it was the topic that came up time and time again. And our students were actually surveyed, and there's been lots of surveys over the years across students globally. And the statistics, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's well up into the 80% of our current undergraduate students say that working for a purposeful business will shape their career choices going forward, as opposed to one that isn't engaged and focused on that. So when we developed our sort of vision and mission at the school and across the university, it's very much one of the key themes that runs across everything that we do, particularly with our undergraduate, but it does go into masters. So every single one of our undergraduate students, for example, and obviously we have a lot coming in every year, have to study and understand business for purpose as opposed to profit, and the differences and what that means and how that can impact irrespective of what sector they're in. So I think, you know, we are doing a huge amount, but there's still an awful long way to go. But it is great to see that it's being driven by the young and the future leaders, as well as existing businesses. And of course, when you see the rise of social enterprise in Scotland and how quickly that's growing, and the momentum even more so throughout COVID, I think we're well placed to take that forward.
That's great. Well, you've been so generous in sharing your thoughts and ideas and suggestions, Gail and Lucy. So, final thoughts from me. It's been brilliant to have the wide-ranging discussion with Gail and Lucy, and we're very, very grateful for their comments and observations. Please do feel free to continue to share your thoughts, be it across social media, be it contacting us directly. Joe will share the slides and the recording link for you by way, and then you will also have an opportunity for further follow-up with any of the team members. So thank you very much for contributing to the discussions. Thank you for attending, and we look forward in any way we can to being able to help you grow your social enterprise in the future. Have a great rest of the day.